Okay, I've replaced all the leads to the indicator lights and rewired that whole harness. The only lights I didn't change are the ones in the panel indicator. I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. Next process is to remove this power transformer. I've gone through a lot of trouble to label all of the leads with a color and a number. And as I unsolder the leads, I'm going to replace them with color-coded little stubs of wire, just so I can keep everything in place. I don't want to have to hunt in the schematic to find out where goes where. That might seem a little excessive, but it's going to be a lot easier for me in the end. Now there's there's 6 bolts that hold this transformer together. There's one on each corner and there's 2 in the center. And I suspect I'm going to have to remove all those to get at it. But I'm not going to bore you with that process, so I'll come back when that's removed and show you what we do next. Okay, I've got the power transformer out. Luckily, I only needed to remove the 2 center bolts and the whole thing came apart. So I decided to just replace all the leads. So I've been in the process. I still have a few to go. What I've been doing is taking a very short piece of 16th inch heat shrink tubing and running it all the way up as far as I can run it underneath this paper. And then attaching a new lead and soldering that in to the old lead, and then putting an 1/8 inch piece of tubing over the top of that whole joint there and shrinking the whole thing down. So I've got a few more to go, and then I'll be ready to put this back in. It's coming along pretty well. The one problem I did have is I took this apart, and I'll show you in the bottom of the case, if you can see it. There's only 2 small holes where these wires feed down through. These 2 holes. So if you were to do this, I'd recommend not marking your wires with flags like this, because they're very difficult to get through the holes, and mark them in a different manner if you ever have to do this process. Other than that, everything's coming together pretty well, and I'll come back to you when I'm a little further along. Okay, I've finished putting all the wires on. I'm going to add a coat of this Corona dope across this area. Try to seal it a little better since that paper is falling apart. It might be a little overkill, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. And then we'll think about putting it back in. Okay, this is where I'm at right now. I finished the power transformer. I decided to replace as many components as I could when I had that out. So I went ahead and replaced most of the capacitors in here. The hard part about fixing this set is getting access to all these components. There's so many layers of wires and components. I had to pull, you see this terminal strip here, I wound up pulling that out because there are 2 capacitors attached to the back of it, as well as one tucked way back in the corner. So I took a Dremel tool and drilled the rivets out and pulled that away, which gave me access to those parts. I didn't put the transformer back right away because not having those wires there gave me still a little more access to the rest of these components as well. I did as much as I could, and then I put the transformer back in and hooked all those wires back up using the little tags that I had soldered in earlier. And then I reattached the terminal strip with some pop rivets and added the last 2 capacitors. And I hooked it up to the variac and slowly brought it up to power And lo and behold, the motor started running, as I had hoped. It turned out to be the power supply feeding the motor and not the motor itself. I think it was trying to go forward and reverse at the same time. Now this set is interesting because it uses the motor as to turn the volume control and to turn the set on and off. Unlike most sets where you just turn the switch with a knob. That is so that the remote control could be used to adjust the volume and the on-off of the set. And this is controlled, the motor is controlled by a wheel at the front of the plate that has a switch, a leaf switch. It goes forward and reverse. There, I just turned the set on. A very ingenious method of doing it back then. In any event, now that I've got this, come this far, my next project will be to try to troubleshoot this radio and get some sound out of the speaker, hopefully, preferably a radio station. I'm going to take all the tubes out and spray contact cleaner on everything and on all these wafer rotary switches and start the troubleshooting process, and I will come back then. Everything's working pretty well so far.